So today we're looking at oil burners, how to fix, how to troubleshoot, how to service, things like that. Just quickly, you don't have to be off-tech to work on these, but if ever something goes wrong, you have to be able to prove you are competent. And off-tech is a good way of proving that, so watch yourself. You've got a couple of nasty things on these. You've got a very high voltage transformer that definitely can kill you. You've got 240 volts, which obviously can kill you. You've got high pressure diesel, and you've got the potential for huge flames, so be careful. Anyway, how do these work? Right, very simple. Fuel air mixture is blown out of the blast tube there. It's blown out of that little nozzle, which produces a very fine atomized spray. The air is produced by a fan blade in here and a fan motor. The oil is produced by a high pressure oil pump that looks like that. They all have these components. That is the on-off for the oil supply, a little solenoid. That is a transformer that produces 30,000 odd volts to produce a spark. There is a little magic eye here, and what that's for is to oops, just fallen apart, I took it out, but anyway, that is there to make it so as it knows whether the flame is actually a light or not. Okay, and then you've got your control box. Now this is the brain of the whole lot. Now, this little brain here has a little button on it. It will go orange or red if there's a fault with the unit. Right, so let's look quickly at troubleshooting. You're going to rock up to this because your boiler isn't working. You're going to have a quick look, and there's going to be a red light on here. What you do is you press to reset, and then you have a listen. The way that these work is, first of all, this is going to blow for a minute. It's going to blow to clear the chamber. No fuel, no spark, no nothing. It's going to blow. So you should listen for it blowing. Once it's sent air through the chamber, it will then start producing a spark from the little probes here. You should be able to hear that. Now, once it's done that, the solenoid is then going to open to let diesel through out here, which will then be ignited. So you should hear fan, fan and spark, fan, spark and ignition. Once it's done that, you should then hear the ignition stop and the flame continue. Right, okay, so what are we really saying here? Why am I telling you this? Right, so you've listened. The first thing you do is you listen. If it just goes hum and nothing else, you've probably got a jammed fan blade. Could be a jammed fan, or jammed motor, jammed fan, or jammed oil pump. They're not always easy to get out, but here, as you can see, if we take this out, you can see how it should spin quite easily and freely on its own. You can see the drive here that drives the oil pump there. Now, if this is seized, you can undo the bolts here, take it out, get to the bearings, grease the bearings. Olive oil's quite good, don't ask me why, it just seems to be. WD-40 is a bit light, and it will work for a while like that. Now that's if it just hums and does nothing. There is another thing it could be as well, which is this start capacitor here. It's not so common on these, but this start capacitor here, if this is blown or burst or leaking, that could be another reason why the motor won't spin. But what you can do is check to make sure the motor is free and see whether it's spinning. See whether it can spin. The other thing you can do is just to check if the oil pump is free, so give it a little twiddle to find out, because obviously if the oil pump is jammed solid, again it can't turn. Assuming that you hear the blow, and you can actually hear it blowing air through. If you then don't hear the spark, you know that what you've got is a spark failure. If you hear the spark and then you don't hear any ignition at all, you know you've got no fuel coming through. If you hear it blow, spark, ignite, continue to spark, and then lock out on here, you know what it's done is it's gone through its whole process but not been able to see that there is a flame. If it hasn't been able to see there's a flame, for example if this magic eye is broken, if it hasn't been able to see there's a flame, it won't continue, because what it thinks it's doing is it thinks it's blowing loads of vapour into the boiler that isn't ignited, which could be an explosion. So it's quite clever. Okay, so that's the basics. Now let's look at a few other things that are common. Well, let's look at the real common one first, which is that this bugger jams up. Now, if this is jammed up, if you can actually get at this in here when it's still in here, if its power's on, you're going to lose a finger. So just be sensible, okay? But look, if you can get this to turn, it's a little bit stiffer when it's connected to the pump, but if it's on its own, it should spin nice and freely. If it isn't, your bearings are gone. If it'll spin freely, but it still won't power up, probably the motor windings are gone. But if it sits here and hums, if this is free and it sits here and hums, it's likely the capacitor. So there you go, that's quite useful for that. By the way, when you're servicing these, if you've got a boiler that's burning extremely badly, so it's producing loads and loads of soot, quite often what the problem is, can I reach a screwdriver while connected to this? Probably not. Right, what usually is the problem is that these lovely little curved fan blades here have collected loads of gubbins in them. So what they do is they collect muck in these. That then turns them from nice little curved fan blades into flat blades, and they then don't blow properly anymore. So what you need to do is if you're getting poor combustion, you want to check this first before you look at things like air adjustments and things like that, because these do choke up very, very easily. This one isn't, you can see, and it's very difficult to tell, because what you need to do is you need to get a little sharp something in, poke it in and just grab it up, because what will happen is that stuff will just gently form a film in here, and it's very difficult to see. Anyway, so that's your motor, that's your, that's sort of that side of it. Motor and your things. Okay, right. Let's look at another common problem, okay? You listen to it run, okay? So you've listened to it run. It has run the fan. It has started to spark. It has clicked, because these click as they come on. They click, open the fuel, and it's then ignited. And then the spark, it's seen the flame, and the spark has stopped. You should be able to hear that. And then it runs for 4, 5, 10, 20 minutes, and then locks out. That is usually this. Now what this is this a little baby solenoid. All you do is take it off. There's no fuel involved, it just comes off. You see a little nut here, Allen key. Undo that, take it off, and you are left with a little solenoid. Hang on. There's your little solenoid, just take the plug off. All that is a coil of wire, because in here is a little valve that it lifts by powering up. Now what happens is, the little fine coils of wire in here, when it's been running for 4, 5, 10, 20 minutes, whatever, will heat up, and if there's a break in them, they will just heat with it, the expansion of the heat will just open it, and it will stop contacting, it'll lose magnetism, and poof, off it goes. That's a common one. So they're pretty easy to tell, but the usual fault there is that it runs for 10 minutes, and then it shuts off, and then if you leave it for 5 minutes, it'll restart perfectly fine and go again. Annoying. Right, other things. You don't really want to look at changing the commissioning on these, okay? If you haven't got the tools and equipment, you don't really want to do it. For the simple reason that you can't tell. Without a flue gas analyzer, you can't tell. So don't be changing the air-fuel mixture, the quantity of air, which is adjusted here. Don't be changing the pressure of the diesel, or the oil running through, which is there. But what you do want to be doing is doing things like cleaning the fan blades, cleaning the filters, which are in, which lives in the side of this. Now, oil pump. Let's look at oil pump. Okay, these can choke up. There's a little filter in them. Now, everyone always thinks these things are bloody witchcraft, and I really don't. I should have got my Allen keys out first. There we are. Hang on. Inside these pumps, all you've really got is a little gear pump. There's not much to them. So let's just have a look and see what we actually have in here. And there's not really much to say about them. Because what you can do is, if these do get full of water, you can actually clear the crap out of them. Again, don't be adjusting the pressure. We'll talk about that in a bit. But really what you're looking to do is to fix it. So look, take that off there. By the way, that there, the P, is the pressure port. What you would do if you had a piece of test equipment, which is just a pressure gauge, you'd be connecting it to the pressure port and adjusting the pressure from there. So you tap into that and see what pressure it gives. And this is the vacuum port, which is to see how much it's having to suck on the oil line coming to it. Anyway, there we are. Right, off that comes, and underneath there's your little filter in there, which can be accessed by undoing that little Allen bob there. So what you can do is just wind that off and see if that filter is full of muck. Right, okay. The rest of it isn't particularly witchcraft either, because bear in mind there's no timing involved in here. There's wrong one. There's no timing systems, nothing. This is just a pump. So in here, all this is a gear pump. So what you can do is just have a little look. So again, so long as you're not adjusting that, you're all right, fairly much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't go too deep on this because if you start giving it more diesel, oh sorry, I run mine on diesel on the boat, so I call it diesel anyway. That is all it is. Look at that, tiny little gear pump, and all that's doing, you can pretty much tell if that's knackered, can't you? Because you can see if it's bits of swarf in there or anything like that. But how simple is that? Not much to it, is there? There we are. You can see this one suffered some water. You can see the little what you call it's here, the little bits of rust there, things like that. And there's your on-off valve sitting there. Okay, so what else have we got? What else can happen? Right, if this runs and it doesn't see the flame, so it runs, it sparks, it lights, and then it goes out. Quite often, what's happened is that this little magic eye here, do you see it's got a little, literally, it's a little light sensing diode there, gets covered in crap. Warning though, if that's getting covered in muck, that is probably because this thing is burning badly, because this should not be in an area where it gets covered in muck. So if this is getting covered in muck, you can fix it by just clearing it, but just wiping it clean. But you have got a further problem, because no soot should be getting this far back. This should be in clean air. But yeah, just wipe that clean. And there you go. More often than not, these don't get filthy, they blow, and something they just don't work anymore. Right, okay, what else? What else do you need to know? You know how to clean the filters in this now. Right, commissioning these. You can't do this. You cannot commission one of these really without a flue gas analyzer. You are setting the pump to a certain pressure. Normally, I mean, just an example, 140 psi or bar or whatever, you'd be setting the pump to. I wouldn't advise touching any of these settings just because they don't tend to vary too much, so you know shouldn't really need to. Other things that go wrong. Okay, so you're in the blast tube. If you hear that spark, you hear the spark, you hear the click as it lets the diesel through, and then you don't hear it light. It's possible that these igniters are not functioning. Now what you can do is you can just look, you can get in and you can look and you can see if they've got a gap, see if they've, because for example sometimes these will split too far apart, sometimes, I mean by distance you're talking, you know, this is a hell of a spark on these things, so there's such a difference. By the way, you touch that while it's going on, you're dead. It's 30,000 volts at a hell of a current, you are finished. It's not 240, that is an absolute killer. You might make it off to, if you got hit by 240, you will not if you've got it plugged in and your fingers are on that. Right, okay, so you want to look to make sure there's a reasonable spark gap. As a look in the manual, but you can probably say somewhere in the region of, you know, 3-4 mil or a bit more. If it's burning badly, another thing is these nozzles just undo. So you can take the nozzle out, you can read the side of it, and you can get a new one from eBay. I'm not going to dig in too deeply, but there's a different, on the side there are marks to say what it is. You can Google it, you can get a new one. You can tell when one of these is gone usually because either there's muck in the boiler where it's burning black, or you sometimes find they're wet at the end, and that means quite often that what it's doing is it's not atomizing properly. If it's wet at the end, it should be dry. Okay, what else might you need to know? The basics are there. You can clean the swarf out of this. You can clean the muck out of that. You can clean the bearings. Those are the main basic factors you've got. The other problem you may have is this little bugger. Good God. To find out whether it's this or not, yeah, great fun. These things are quite interesting actually. I'm just going to put my phone down for 1 second to take it apart. Yeah, professional, eh? Right. Interesting how these things work. Look, what they do is they have a bimetallic strip at the top here. And when you first turn it on, this bimetallic strip starts to move and drag all this series of contacts on. So the first thing it'll do is it'll drag on the fan, then it'll drag on the spark. So what it's doing is it's just moving up, contacting more and more switches all the time. Click, 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 all the time. So what you can do is you can look to see whether things have gone wrong in there, but to be fair, well, good luck. One favourite trick of mine, or not favourite trick of mine, but one trick that you quite often, professionals will do, is they will have one of these boxes built up, and it's not got none of the guts in it. All it has is a series of little switches, because that's all this is doing. The first thing this is doing, this little box here, is it's doing switch on fan. So they'll have a switch for fan. Then they'll have a switch on spark, and they'll power up the spark generator. It'll then have switch on diesel flow. It'll switch that on, and then it'll go. Do you see what I mean? So you can then check to see if it's running by fitting a series of switches. This is only for test procedure because, good God, if you left it running like that, someone's going to die. Right. I don't know what more I can tell you really. These are a pretty robust piece of equipment. It's worth digging in to have a look. Yeah, but don't alter settings. If it was working before, don't alter settings. There's no real way of being able to see visually how well these things are burning. So you know, if you've got a flue gas analyzer, what you can do is you can start to tweak the air mixture, so you can raise or lower the air. The thing to do is to set the oil pressure to the manufacturer's rated amount first. Now this one hasn't actually got a plate on it telling you what the pressure should be, but most will have a plate that says set me at 140 psi or whatever. Start with that and then work with the air, because that's your easiest way of doing it. Okay guys, I hope that helped. I don't really know past that what I can tell you. Be careful, you can quite easily end up, there are more fires that are caused by oil boilers than by gas boilers, mainly because, yeah, it can go wrong easier. But there we are. Cheers, hope that helps.